On 14th June 1645, near Naseby in Northamptonshire, Parliament's new model army met King Charles I's main field army. The result helped decide the English Civil War and the future of the monarchy. By then, England had been torn apart by years of political breakdown, religious fear, and competing claims over authority. Naseby became the moment when those tensions turned into a decisive military test. Parliament had built a more disciplined army, while the king still relied on veteran cavalry and hard-pressed supporters. Both sides believed they were fighting for lawful order, not simply for power. The war's leaders carried enormous pressure. Sir Thomas Fairfax, Oliver Cromwell, and King Charles I were all constrained by politics, shortages, and the fear that one defeat could unravel everything. Armies in 1645 were hungry, muddy, and constantly short of supplies. Muskets, pikes, swords, horse pistols, and artillery all mattered. But discipline and morale often mattered more than equipment. The new model army moved quickly through the Midlands, pressing the king's forces and trying to force a battle on favourable terms. Its march showed a new level of organisation and purpose. Charles's army had been manoeuvring under strain, hoping to gather strength and avoid being trapped. When the armies closed near Naseby, both commanders knew the next day could be decisive. The battlefield was open, rolling ground with shallow rises and dips, broken by hedges and lanes. Weather and visibility could shape the fighting as much as the men themselves. Cromwell and Fairfax aimed for steady pressure and controlled movement, using infantry and horse together. The Royalists leaned on aggressive cavalry action, hoping to break the line early. As the battle opened, artillery and musket fire spread smoke across the field. Units advanced in measured steps, with commanders trying to keep formations intact under growing noise and confusion. The first fighting tested both wings, especially the cavalry. On the Royalist side, initial momentum created danger. On the parliamentary side, steadier control began to show its value. The centre became the pressure point. Infantry bodies held under fire, while officers tried to keep men aligned, because once a centre wavered, the whole battle could tilt. The decisive movement came when parliamentary horse regained control and returned to the fight. That flexibility let them strike where the Royalists were least able to recover. Once the Royalist line began to bend, the advantage widened quickly. Pursuit, pressure, and loss of cohesion turned a hard-fought contest into a collapse that the king's army could not reverse. By the end of the day, Parliament had captured men, artillery, and crucial papers from the Royalist camp. Those documents later exposed the king's hopes and strengthened Parliament's political position. The battlefield itself fell quiet, but the war did not end overnight. Still, Naseby shattered the king's field strength and made a royal victory far less plausible. In the years that followed, the conflict moved toward the king's defeat, trial, and execution. Naseby did not cause every later event, but it made the outcome much harder to avoid. The battle also helped establish the reputation of the new model army as a national force, not merely a regional one. Its discipline became a model for later military organization. Historians still debate details of command, timing, and how much each flank mattered. The broad picture is clear, but the exact sequence of every movement remains partly reconstructed. Some accounts emphasize Cromwell's cavalry, while others stress the steadiness of the infantry and the mistakes of Royalist coordination. Naseby is best understood as a combined arms victory, not a single heroic charge. The landscape today is quieter, marked by fields, roads, and village edges rather than cannon smoke. Yet the contours of the ground still help explain why the armies met there. Visitors can still read the battlefield as a place of movement and distance. What seems peaceful now was once a landscape of speed, noise, uncertainty, and command decisions. Naseby endures because it shows how a civil war can turn on organization, morale, and timing as much as bravery. It is a battle remembered for consequences, not spectacle. The exact balance of luck and planning will always be debated, as it is in many battles. But on that June day, Parliament found the clearer army and the sharper moment. For the king's supporters, Naseby was a warning that courage alone could not overcome supply problems and weakened coordination. For Parliament, it proved that reform could change the course of war. The battle's legacy is not only military, it shaped how later generations understood authority, resistance, and the cost of political breakdown in a divided kingdom. Even now, the site invites careful looking rather than easy certainty. The ground, the weather, and the surviving records all help, but none can restore every detail. That uncertainty is part of the story. Naseby survives in history because it was both a battlefield and a turning point, where the future of England moved in a single day. The armies that met here were made of ordinary people carrying extraordinary burdens. Their choices were shaped by fear, duty, exhaustion, and the demands of leaders far above them. That human reality is easy to forget when battles are reduced to dates and outcomes. At Naseby, every movement depended on men trying to stay together under pressure. The king's defeat at Naseby weakened his ability to negotiate from strength. From that point on, the war increasingly became a struggle over terms, not just territory. Parliament's victory also showed the power of a professionalized army built for sustained campaigning. The new model army was not perfect, but it was better prepared for this war. The battle is remembered through surviving accounts, archaeological study, and the landscape itself. Together they offer a clearer picture than any single source could provide. Naseby remains powerful because it compresses a national crisis into one open field. The stakes were constitutional, religious, and personal, but the fighting still came down to formation and resolve. For modern viewers, the lesson is not triumphalism. It is how fragile political order can become when compromise fails and armed force takes the place of settlement. On the ground at Naseby, the past is still legible in the shape of the land. That quiet visibility is part of why the battle continues to matter.